You like Whiplash? Well, boy, do we got some good Whiplash for you right now. A few weeks after Amazon acquired the James Bond franchise from the Broccoli family, causing anxious thoughts aplenty about numerous bad spin-off shows, the resurrection of James Bond Jr., and Q Branch having a partnership with Prime Delivery, we have some cool news! Denis Villeneuve, director of Dune's Part 1 and Part 2, and the likes of Sicario, Prisoners, Arrival, and Blade Runner 2049, has just been revealed as a director for the next James Bond movie. So, what should we expect from the next 007 film with Villeneuve behind the camera, and why is it so exciting? I'm Ewan, this is What Culture, and with me today to talk all about, the Villeneuve-ness of it all, is your friend and mine, Josh Brown.
Hello, I'm so excited for this, Ewan, because like you just mentioned there, it's been a bit of a tumultuous year for James Bond and Amazon and the Broccoli family, like you said. And after that initial split with the producers stepping down, I kind of had no faith that this next movie, or whatever they choose to do next, like you mentioned, maybe it's going to be a young James Bond spin-off, maybe it's going to be an M spin-off, maybe we're going to finally get that Aunt May spin-off, who knows?
Aunt May is now... Because she was no, she wasn't a spy.
She was supposed to be a spy.
Peter Parker's parents were a spy.
They were
the James Bond people are so confused right now.
I know, they really are. Sorry, I've gone completely off tangent 1 minute into this video. But the point is, I was scared, but the appointment of Denis as the director of the next Bond movie has inspired a lot of confidence. Because while I don't trust the producers at Amazon, for me, Denis is one of the greatest filmmakers working today, but also one of the greatest filmmakers working at that blockbuster level. I know a lot of people naturally, because of his reputation, go to someone like a Chris Nolan when they think of a blockbuster that has that kind of cerebral edge or even focus on character and innovation. But to me, Denis is right behind him with the likes of Dune Part 1 and 2, like you mentioned, but obviously also his kind of more, slightly niche, I suppose, works on the likes of Prisoners or Sicario or whatnot. So overall, I'm very excited, and I'm excited to dive into what I think he can actually bring to this IP, because you are much more of a James Bond fan than I am. But I want to get your opinion on this and how you think he's going to fit into this universe and world.
It's very exciting, and it's very interesting as well, because you mentioned Christopher Nolan then, and obviously we know that Nolan, I believe, was involved in some discussions about doing a Bond film, but the overall kind of constraints that were expected to be placed on the franchise, there's been so much talk for so long that despite, the Broccolis being really good producers, that a Bond film had to have a certain level of control exercised from above the director's level, which is a shame, because we know that when you let directors do their own thing, you get really stylish, unique results. And I think that's part of what, kind of led Nolan to not really wanting to pursue that. So it's interesting that Denis, who we all know is, very authorial in terms of what he does as a filmmaker, that he's being drawn to this. And instantly I'm very, very excited. And then again, that's not to say that the James Bond movies beforehand have had this kind of like mollified MCU approach where everything is kind of the same, because we know that there is a big difference between a Martin Campbell James Bond movie and a Sam Mendes James Bond movie, for instance. But yeah, no, I'm just excited because I think he's got a lot of real good visual flair.
Yeah.
He says in his statement that he's a James Bond fan as well, which I'll read in a second. And also, you mentioned Sicario just before. Tonally very different to what I think we can expect from a Villeneuve James Bond movie. But there is a sequence involving Benicio del Toro's character in that film, which I think is maybe a very good kind of tone poem, mood board kind of, approximation of what we can potentially expect, in terms of getting the military aesthetic and creepy espionage aspects down. We've seen Villeneuve do that excellently in Sicario, which is a movie that everyone should see. It is a complete masterpiece. But I'll go into the quote that Villeneuve had to say about this after it was announced. He says, "So my earliest movie-going memories are connected to 007. I grew up watching James Bond films with my father ever since Dr. No with Sean Connery. I'm a die-hard Bond fan. To me, he's sacred territory. I intend to honor the tradition and open the path for many new missions to come. This is a massive responsibility, but also incredibly exciting for me and a huge honor." And yeah, no, I think just coming off this, I'm just super surprised that he's the name that has come from this, because again, with Amazon, you'd maybe be expecting someone that they can more easily kind of shift into whatever, but dare I say I'm optimistic about the next steps in this franchise.
I think I am too.
Want to stay safe online and save big? Get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free and up to a $50 Amazon gift card. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description and it's all yours.
The issues that some directors had with the previous Bond movies, you mentioned the reports that came out about Chris Nolan having those preliminary chats. We know on the record that Danny Boyle had a lot of issues getting his version of Bond made, so there have been these clashes with these auteurs, for lack of a better term, in the past, and it makes me interested in what approach is Amazon going to take. Are they aware of the bad press and the negative sentiment around them?
They gotta be, right?
Splitting from
they've got
the Broccoli
computers,
family.
they got their phones, they
Yes,
can see all of us going, Jeff's doing his big mad Venice wedding, is he?
And I mean, they've already done this, right? They've already kind of been through a similar situation when they got the rights to The Lord of the Rings and they made a $1 billion TV show, and they've kind of dabbled in major IP that has a lot of love beforehand, and they've made a lot of mistakes, they've done a lot of things right, but surely they've learned this time around. And I just hope that, yes, even though it is an absolutely behemoth of a company, they've picked Denis Villeneuve to go, we trust you, we trust your vision, we like what you've done before, I'm going to give you a lot of control this time to make the Bond that you want. Because I do sort of think that even though he is very innovative and can be very experimental, he's also a pretty safe pair of hands, all things
With a lot
considered.
of franchise experience as well. You think of like Blade Runner coming into that, Dune as well, big IP. He has grappled with these big properties before, so it makes sense to me that he can navigate a path forward with this franchise. Kind of maybe, I mean, no, it's completely different kind of context. So Tony Gilroy was not a Star Wars fan, but with Andor, he really managed to, lay a unique stamp on that franchise.
Yeah.
That is what we kind of really want from these big properties going forward. So
I think so.
My big question for you, Josh.
Come on, man.
In terms of you maybe not being as big a James Bond guy as me, what would you be hoping for with this next iteration under Villeneuve? What are the specific things you maybe might expect him to bring to the table? And what are you hoping for?
To me, the blueprint for the next James Bond, bear with me, this might sound way off base, but it is Dune Part 2. I was a huge fan of the original Dune, but the second movie kind of took things to the next level and really, for me, managed to merge his almost two styles. It showed me that he can make a crowd pleaser that brings in nearly $800 million at the box office, that is a big spectacle, that has action sequences, but remain like truthful to himself, keep the kind of weirdness, keep the authenticity of the source material and not shy away from going all in on the weirder elements, and most importantly, kind of trusting the audience to follow along. Like, there are huge sequences in that movie that are kind of like in black and white, and they're very stylized and very violent as well. So I want to see him kind of bring that same approach to James Bond, to have the spectacle, to have the stuff that we want to see from a spy like Bond and a story like Bond, no matter the time period, no matter the characters that are involved, but keep that element of like the understanding that you're watching someone really kind of flexing their muscles and really appreciating all different like forms of cinema, really appreciating the set design, to the script, to the direction, to the cinematography, to the costumes. I mean, the costumes of Dune Part 1 and 2 are absolutely amazing. I think he's got that attention to detail and that kind of holistic view where it feels like, even though he works with a lot of really creative and impressive collaborators, you can sense his authorship over everything, and I think that is definitely on display with the action sequences as well. Like, for me, the opening of Dune Part 2 is a very simple sequence, right, where you have this small-scale action sequence, and you get, like, the bad guys, they kind of float up in this really, what on the page would have just said, the guys in space float to the top of a hill, right?
That's what it says on the screen.
Yeah, it is. It is. He's a hack writer, apparently. But it's such a simple scene that is then shot so evocatively and shot practically, and you're watching it, and you're thinking, I've never seen this done like that. And I want to see that being brought over to Bond, because we've had so many James Bond movies now, we've had so many James Bond imitators, that I want to see the hits, as they were, reinvented in a way where you think, I know why this exists.
Yeah.
I know what kind of stamp you've wanted to put on this. You're not just playing the hits. You're not just giving us the same old stuff in the same old way that we've seen it so many times before.
Someone's at the moment already clipping your hack writer thing there to do I think Foolsville sucks with Denis Villeneuve.
That's the headline of this video now. Yeah.
But I totally agree with you. I think the way the Craig films, and this is my personal opinion as a James Bond person, is that I think the Craig films fell off when they became more concerned with legacy. And I think Skyfall, for all its, positives, it's a really, really good Bond movie. It kind of moved away from the mission statement that Campbell had with Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace as well, which I kind of think is underrated. I know it's done all the writer's strike and stuff, but that movie is better than it's aged well. That's all I'm saying. I really, really want Denis to come into this space and be mindful of the history of Bond. Of course, it needs to have certain features for it to be a part of the DNA of the franchise. But at the same time, I'm looking for a real kind of switch moment where it's like, hey, we're going into this GoldenEye, or going into this Casino Royale. We're going to go and kind of really recontextualize what we think this next era of Bond should be. And we know that the next star is going to be younger. There's been loads of different names kind of floating around, like James Norton has been, one that's really come up. I think Callum Turner as well has also been mentioned. I'm really hoping that George McKay gets the part.
I could go for a bit of George McKay.
And I kind of think with the scheduling and around everything, he'd fit the perfect kind of age for that. I don't know. The way he carries himself.
Yeah.
I think he's maturing really, really well as an actor, and he's kind of got that kind of I don't know, there's just something about his being and sense of self that kind of really leaps Bond at me. He's got the style, but he's also kind of got that there's a little bit of gruff and kind of cutting edge to him that I would really, really like to see in a Bond movie.
Dude, I think one of the things that maybe people are overlooking, or at least in my opinion, and my pretentious opinion about Denis Villeneuve, as if I'm some kind of expert, but what I think
he's selling himself short here, folks. He's the Denis Villeneuve guy.
I'm a dissertation. Here we go. No, but I think although obviously people are going to talk about the aesthetics, his approach to tone, the spectacle that he's able to convey, how he always manages to go completely mad with the scale of something but keep it focused on character. I think he's really underrated as an actor's director, and what I mean by that is every time he works with someone, he kind of gets the best out of them all of the time, and that makes me kind of so much more secure in whoever the next Bond is, because I just know that he's going to be the director who gets whatever is needed out of him. I always think about those quotes from Dave Bautista, who was in Blade Runner and was in the Dune movies as well, and has worked with Denis Villeneuve quite a lot now. And I remember him saying, initially, Denis didn't want Bautista in that opening scene of Blade Runner, but the producers wanted him, and he had to test over and over again. And there was a certain point where Bautista was like, you're the only director who's ever seen me as an actor and has kind of identified the potential in me. And I think the relationship he gets with those actors brings out their best performance, because I was a fan of Bautista, but it was until I saw him in that 5-minute scene in Blade Runner where I thought...
Which might be the best scene in the whole movie.
Literally. I was like, you've got the sauce. You are way better than I expected you to be. I didn't know you could do that. And he also did that with an actor that I also really love, Timothée Chalamet, with Dune Part 2, because I love Timmy C. I love him in Little Women. I love him in Lady Bird. I think he's a great actor. What a hot take that is. But I never saw him as an action lead. I never saw him as this imposing figure who could maybe channel an element of darkness, right? And then I watched Dune Part 2 and I was like, you could do anything now. I had that kind of confidence of, wow, I had this image of you as being limited in this way, and you've completely broken through that. Thanks in part, just in part of he's a great actor, and of course he always had that in him. But I think Denis can bring that out of you to the point where I think about who's going to be the next Bond, and I'm like, if you wanted it to be the 12-year-old lad from Gateshead who was in 28 Years Later, I'd probably go, I think Denis can get a really good performance out of him.
The alpha zombie.
Hey,
to be honest,
he's got to be the villain, right? If anyone can go up against Bond in terms of both physicality and physicality, it's gonna be him.
Oh, we're just putting out our options there, but let us know what you think of the Denis Villeneuve news, James Bond stuff down in the comments below. Are you excited that he has been confirmed as the next director? And who do you think should be the next person to step into the boots of 007? Really curious to know, because I always feel like people have decent picks with these, you know? It's very rare. I feel like we're out of the cliched casting choices era. But yeah, drop the video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more. I've been Ewan, this has been Josh, and we will see you next time.